Okay, and welcome to SQL injection for high level. You've seen SQL map used to crack low and medium security. So let's try on high. So here's the website, the DVWA. Security level is already on high. So let's open up Burp Suite and get the proxy running. Just need a temporary project. Okay, so the proxy is running, and now let's enable it in Firefox. That's the proxy setup. Let's reload that. Looks like the proxy isn't recording the request for some reason. Intercept is on. So let's check options. That's running. You can always try turning it off and on again to see if that helps. No. Let's go back into preferences, into the network proxy, and just double check the settings one more time. Okay, so the proxy's right. I forgot to use proxy for all protocols, and I was ignoring proxy for localhost and 127, which is exactly what we're trying to use for this. Now, when we refresh the page, the browser's waiting for the proxy to confirm or forward on the request. So let's look at that request now. There we go, Burp Suite has caught all the requests and there's a little bit of a backlog, so we just forward through them all. Okay, let's turn intercept off until we've got to the right page. On high, it's completely different. Instead of using get and post requests, you need to do it via the session. So this second window allows you to insert into the session, and then it will refresh the first page just to simulate going through the session. Now we're all set up, we can enable intercept again. Now we're ready to capture the request just as we did in the low and medium security. So let's generate that request right now. There we go, there's our request. Let's save that to a file in our home directory. I'm going to give it a file name I can remember, request.txt. It looks like I've done this already before, so let's just overwrite that file. Let's open up Terminal. Let's tidy up the windows. Much better. And we can redo the SQL map command as we've done previously. In case you didn't know, the tilde means current directory. It saves you having to type /home/ and then your username. So let's run that command. Unfortunately, SQL map has not been able to attack the database using SQL injection. We could do what SQL map is suggesting, add in things like the level or the risk and up those numbers. But in my testing, I wasn't able to get SQL map to attack the database using SQL injection, using any of the settings. So what does this mean for you? It means you're going to have to learn some SQL. Not a lot, but enough to get you by. So let's go back into the DVWA app. Right, here's the app. Let's make sure everything's working. Oh, It looks like it's broken. Let's reopen that window. I've left Burp Suite running. Don't forget to quit that. Let us reopen Burp Suite. So we can turn our intercept off. In fact, better yet, let's quit the application and turn off the proxy. Also remembering to turn off Firefox use of the proxy. So let's go back into Firefox's preferences and into the network. All we need to do is turn it back to use system proxy settings. Now we can close Firefox's preferences. And now when we open this window, it should work first time. Phew, at last. Let's do a little test to prove it works. And now let's play around with some quotes, double quotes, single quotes, to see what breaks it. So the double quote is making it through okay and doesn't cause any errors. Let's see what the single quote does. So the single quote has broken it, and that's a good place to start. Now we can try the command again. We're going to put the SQL comment in, which is --, and this will tell SQL to ignore everything that comes after it, because we're breaking the SQL by inserting things in there that shouldn't have been there in the first place. Now let's try and get more than one record back, and we can do that by specifying OR. So you've got the first condition, ID equals 1, or 1, which equates to true, so it's going to show everything. That's gone wrong again. Oh, I see what I've gone wrong. When you put --, you have to put a space after it. There you go. And that is all the users. So how does that help us? It tells us we can put arbitrary SQL inside this field and it will be executed by MySQL. But how can we use that to get a list of actual users? For this, let's go into MySQL. In MySQL, there are some special databases, one of which is called the information schema. So let's go into that database now. The use statement is MySQL's way of changing database. Now we can list all the tables within the database. And the two tables we're interested in is tables and columns. We now need to explore what the format of these two tables are, so that we can then start to build our SQL queries to extract all the information that we need out of them. So we do this with the describe keyword, followed by the table name. And that is everything that defines that table. But out of all that information, all we need to see is the table schema and table name. So let's build that query now, with select the two column names from this table, tables, don't forget the semicolon, very important, and hit enter. So from this you can tell there's 162 tables in MySQL. But let's not give the game away about what tables we're actually trying to find from DVWA. And how do you get the column names? Start by doing a similar thing again. Select table schema, column name, from, and the table columns. But in this case, I'm actually prefixing it with the database name. This is something that will come in handy later. And there you go, 1,850 different columns. Let's cycle back through the previous commands using the up arrow to get the SQL that helps us extract all the table names. And we can copy that, so we can paste it into the form field and then use that to inject it into the session. But first, we need to reopen the Firefox window so we can see what's going on. Before we use the actual query, let's create a test one just to prove it's still working. Okay, as the message says, something went wrong. Let's try that again. But this time, I know, instead of the OR, we need to use the union to combine two SQL statements together, not forgetting the all-important space at the end of the comment. Great. But I want to make one more change to that SQL. I want to stop that first user being returned and only executing our SQL statement. I'll do that by making the ID unmatchable. In this case, I use the letter A because ID is a numeric field, it won't match anything. Great. So let's go back to terminal and get the query that grabs all the tables and build our injection attack around that. So we need to match A and union and then paste in our SQL. I remember this from before. You know when I said put information schema in front of the table name, this is why. Because the application is operating in a different database, you need to tell it the database you want to target. So all we need to do is put information schema dot in front of the table name. And now we can see the same data we got from the terminal. And you can see the first name is the database and the surname is the table name. And this is the one we're interested in, the users table. So let's try the same thing with the columns. We'll do the same sort of query. So A to not match anything, union, select, and then we need table underscore schema, as well as the column name. From, and don't forget the database, information underscore schema, dot, and then columns, which is the table. Oh, I forgot to put the SQL comment in at the end. So let's try that again, adding dash dash, followed by a space. Great, that's worked. We can see database names and field names. So let's make this list a little bit shorter. And we can do that by adding a where clause onto our SQL statement. So after columns, add where, and then table underscore schema equals dvwa. We're basically saying everything where the database is dvwa. So that's a much shorter list of all the field names. In hindsight, we should have actually selected table underscore name instead of table schema, and this would have made it even shorter. And then we could have said table underscore name equals users, and that would have given us the exact table with all the fields, rather than all the fields across the DVWA database. But you live and learn. So looking down this list, we can see the fields we're after is user and the password field. So let's build the query to actually solve the puzzle and get the username and password out. I'm being lazy and I've just copied and pasted the previous SQL, and what I'll do is I'll remove the fields from after the select and I'll replace them with user and password, and then I'll change the table from information underscore schema to dvwa, and we can remove everything else up until the double dash. Make sure there's a space at the end after that comment. Okay, that's gone wrong. I know what's happened. We've used dvwa, which is the database, instead of users, which is the table name. So let's reuse that SQL statement, adding in the table. There you go. List of all the users in the table, along with their password hash. And that is how you solve SQL injection on high level. In the next lecture, I'll talk about how to decode the hashes, just like you did in the low and medium security levels.